Cool. What's next?
Coming up next, we have the founder of livepeer.tv himself, Mr. Doug B. Petkanics.
I feel like it's really cool to be here. I think it's, I don't know, it's like one of those things where you see like Steve Jobs or something, or Jeff Bezos, they had their little office or something. I told Chris, I feel like this is the beginning of something pretty huge. So, yeah, I don't know. I should play.
All right, hey everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight to the Live Peer meetup. Thanks, Chris and Philip, for planning, Philip for hosting. Thanks, Angelo, for coming to play. It's great to have such like creative, talented people who are interested in this project. It's one of the reasons that we're building Live Peer, because we think live streaming really can be this great empowering, equalizing force for creative people to get their messages out to the world, to connect with their audience, to own their content. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to talk a lot about what Live Peer is, and a lot of what Live Peer is has to do with technology and infrastructure. So this will be a little bit more of a technical talk focused on blockchain, Ethereum, and video infrastructure, and then kick it over to Chris, who will be able to talk more about Live Peer TV and content and users and applications that can exist on top of Live Peer. So let's see, I had a remote, but we'll go without it. I was going to do a demo. The demo is happening live. We're streaming this to livepeer.tv. Hopefully lots of people are watching it. You guys can bookmark livepeer.tv. You can leave it open in a browser tab. A lot of talented people kind of duck in and do performances, songs, talk about technology, talk about blockchain. So it's a fun kind of test application for now that's going to grow into something much bigger and much more powerful in the future. Cool. So what is Live Peer? Live Peer is video broadcasting infrastructure. What it lets anyone do is broadcast a video into the Live Peer network, and anyone who's running the Live Peer software is basically contributing their computing power and their bandwidth to encode and distribute those videos into all the formats necessary to reach unlimited users on every possible device type. And it's all done in a peer-to-peer way. It's decentralized. You don't have to trust any company or central party. And a lot of the incentives and security that make this possible is built on the Ethereum ecosystem. So can I just get a show of hands who here is familiar with Ethereum? A lot of people. For those of you who are not, Ethereum is a blockchain-based platform. And what it allows you to do, it allows you to deploy a program or an application that will run exactly as written on all of the computers on the Ethereum network around the world, such that you don't need to trust any counterparty, any central company, any individual to run your program. It'll behave exactly as it's deployed. And that becomes really powerful because you can actually embed all sorts of incentives into these applications. People can earn money if they play certain roles in these networks. And in our case, if you contribute your computing power and your bandwidth and your kind of expertise, and we'll get into that later, you'll earn the money that's paid by broadcasters in order to use this video infrastructure. So my talk will get into how that works and why that may be interesting. So just quick background on video. I'm sure you're all familiar with different streaming services like YouTube, Periscope, Snapchat, YouNow, services like Twitch for gaming. Live video is growing like crazy. Everyone's walking around with a mobile phone with a video camera in their pocket. Everyone is a potential broadcaster. And all of these existing broadcasting platforms are potential users of Live Peer's infrastructure. Because again, what Live Peer is it's just this network that exists that anyone can use to power all their video encoding and their video distribution. And because it's peer-to-peer and decentralized, there's lots of potential advantages, including cost, but reducing single point of failure, censorship resistance, and others. So while all these existing kind of big companies are interesting, and that might be, it might drive a lot of kind of usage of the Live Peer network in the future, I'm actually more excited about some of the use cases which were not possible without a decentralized system. So go to the next slide. So these are things that are really only possible with the use of kind of blockchain technology and decentralization and the incentives. So for example, one thing we can be really powerful with is uncensorable live journalism. A lot of times in an area of conflict or crisis, live video is one of the first things to get cut off through services like, Facebook or YouTube. Anything that may be considered controversial or potentially go against terms of service or even go against advertisers' wishes may be one of the first things to get shut down. But if you want like the truth about what's going on the ground in real time to get out there, peer-to-peer is actually a much more robust solution. If something's being broadcast through a centralized network, you can cut it off through DNS, you can cut off the server. In a peer-to-peer network where you're passing video around to one another, there's no single point of failure to cut off. I'm excited about cryptocurrency being deeply embedded in a video platform. It allows use cases like pay-as-you-go content consumption, whether that be for expert networks like Doctor on Demand or telepsychiatry, or paying anyone with a skill or a trade for their expertise as they go. Or it can be for entertainment. It can be for any number of use cases that really allow people to monetize their time without access to the traditional payment rails, credit cards, banks, accounts, services. And livepeer.tv is kind of working towards that vision alone. On the technical side, livepeer's infrastructure solves a big problem for people who have large audiences, which is scaling and handling spikes in capacity. So a lot of times streamers, their traffic looks like this until a very popular event, and then their traffic looks like this for 10 minutes, and then it comes back down to here. So in a centralized network, if you're running your own infrastructure, you need to pay to provision enough servers to handle this spike, even though most of the time you're just using this amount of traffic. And it can be very expensive or just very technically challenging to scale. Whereas with livepeer, you can just pay as you go into the network to use whatever capacity you require. It's all market pricing. And finally, we talked about Ethereum before. Ethereum, other Web3 solutions like Filecoin and Swarm, identity solutions like Uport, all these decentralized infrastructure projects create something called Web3. It's kind of the next phase of the internet, the decentralized internet. And all those projects kind of solve different problems: file storage, compute, identity. livepeer is one of these infrastructure projects, and we say that we're the live streaming layer in the Web3 stack. So if you actually are building a decentralized application and you want to include video, livepeer is your infrastructure solution. Cool, so these are some of the use cases. So real quick background to get into the technology. The way video streaming works today is that a broadcaster from their camera, their phone, their laptop webcam sends video to what's called a media server. And a media server is something that's familiar with all of the complexities of video technology. It knows all the formats, the codecs. It might have features like DRM, closed captioning, DVR, all sorts of stuff. And then once a media server encodes a video into all the different formats and bit rates to reach all the devices at different connection speeds, it needs to distribute that content to all the users who want to consume it, thousands or millions of users. And for that, we use a layer called a content delivery network, a CDN. And what CDNs do is they put computers all around the world in thousands of locations, and they copy the video into all of those locations, so when you request a video, it can be served from a server near you. Similarly, it might store the video for playback later, and then the CDN serves the video out to mobile phones, laptops, smart TVs, etc. So in this world today, these components are centralized, and they're often closed source and proprietary. They're owned by companies who have put a lot of work into doing the complex engineering to make them work, and then they charge a lot of money for the usage of them. It can be up to $3 per stream per hour to use a cloud service to broadcast video before bandwidth, or it could be $5,000 licensing fee to license a media server and run it on your own infrastructure for like Adobe Professional. So very expensive. So what we want to do is we want to replace all of this in the middle, the next slide, with Web3, which again is this set of technologies that are building kind of the decentralized, trustless, and open source versions of these technologies, where there is no company that's charging a margin or a markup. Instead, it's decentralized networks that you're paying into at market price or with cost advantages. And we'll get into some of those. So livepeer provides some of the solutions in this decentralized internet cloud, but other services like Ethereum and Swarm and Filecoin and Truebit and lots of great projects provide different layers of this. So that's how streaming works today. So if we want to decentralize it, how do we do that? We have to do 3 things. So the first is we have to build an open source media server that anyone can contribute to and that anyone can run, rather than a proprietary one that you have to license from Wowza or Adobe. The second thing you have to do is you have to actually incentivize people to run it. Why would you give up your compute and your bandwidth to run this media server? So that's where we have to embed kind of crypto token-based incentives that run on the Ethereum blockchain. And then finally, we have to build the security to make sure that if random people around the world are encoding and distributing your video, how do we make sure that they don't insert malicious frames of content, illegal content? How do we make sure that they're actually doing the work that you're paying them to do with encoding and distribution? Because with a central company, that's actually easy. If they cheat or steal your money, you sue them or you stop doing business with them, and their reputation is on the line. Whereas in an anonymous, decentralized, open network, it's much harder to hold a random computer halfway around the world accountable for that. So we use blockchain-based security protocol to ensure that. So I'm going to talk about some of the technical details of these things. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes.
How do you prevent yourself becoming the live leak of Web3 or even worse, content being streamed on your platform?
Okay, so this is about preventing illegal content from being streamed on the platform. Good question. So at the protocol level, livepeer is just about moving bits around an open network, the same way the internet protocols like HTTP and TCP are about moving bits. And there's no way to potentially identify or discriminate on what those videos are. But at the application level, anyone who builds an application on livepeer that helps people discover and surface videos, the same sort of content moderation solutions apply that would apply in a centralized world. And I think it's a big opportunity in the decentralized space for someone to design and build a decentralized moderation protocol that protocols can plug into natively without relying on a company or a trusted person to do it. Similarly, our media server has block lists and allow lists that would let anyone running a node block certain addresses or pieces of content if they were flagged or reported or they pulled it from a service. So, cool. All right, I'll press on and then we can get back to more questions. So, real quick on a media server. I mentioned media servers. They're familiar with the full video stack. They transcode, transrate, and transmux the video, which means one video comes in, but to be playable on smart TVs, phones, laptops, 3G connections, LTE connections, high-speed broadband connections, you might need to convert that one video into 24 different streams to be served out to different players. And media servers for live context are great at doing that fast in real time and handle all the input and output with video. So we have an open source media server called LPMS. If there's any video engineers in the house, we take contributions and looking for people to help work on that as well. So that's kind of the first thing that we built, and that's on GitHub. So how do we incentivize people to run this? And this might be a good thing to come back to for questions later. But how many people have heard of proof of work? It's the way Bitcoin is mined, right? So how many people have heard of proof of stake? about the same. So proof of stake replaces burning electricity and computing algorithms to mine blocks and secure a blockchain with basically putting down a security deposit to produce blocks on a blockchain. And then if you cheat, your deposit is taken away. So we use a similar mechanism called delegated proof of stake, where instead of everyone running transcoders, running the media server on their laptops, which wouldn't be very good because you don't want your laptop sitting in between, this live stream and, thousands of users downstream on the internet. You might not have enough bandwidth. You might not have a GPU. It's really, you need kind of significant resources to run a media server for live video. So what we do is we let everyone participate by electing whoever they think is going to do the best job of encoding and distributing video. And everyone who wants to be one of these transcoders advertises the prices they're going to charge. They advertise all their statistics of how they've done in the past are viewable on the blockchain. So have they ever cheated in their transcoding? Have they ever been penalized? Have they not showed up to do the work that was assigned to them? So that's all visible. And the way that the LivePeer protocol works is if you are elected to be one of these active transcoders and you encode and distribute video, you earn LivePeer token. It's a cryptocurrency token. People use these token to elect you essentially to delegate towards you. And if you do the work honestly, you as a transcoder advertise what percentage of the fees you're going to share back to them. So it's a lot of detail. It's a lot to get into. But basically, anyone who holds token and participates in electing good performing transcoding nodes in the network earn some of the fees that flow through the platform. And basically, by doing that, everyone is long-term incentivized for this network to be really useful, really cheap, really performant, so that there's a lot of usage, so that a lot of fees flow through the platform, and so that it's high quality. And we can come back to questions and discussion. You have one now?
Yeah, how do I know which node is capable enough as a normal user?
So good question. So the question was, how do I know which node is capable enough as a normal user? One is you can see all the statistics about how they've done in the past. And the second thing is it actually is quasi-social. So they campaign, they post a forum post about what kind of hardware they're running, who they are. Maybe they've made contributions to the LivePeer ecosystem, and you would essentially delegate some stake towards them in order to award them, but you'd also be looking out for yourself, because I didn't get into the details, but they all advertise what price am I charging per segment of video, and what percent of my rewards am I going to share back to you if you elect me. And you'll see if they ever cheat or get penalized, and we'll talk about how that works. And then if they get penalized, you would get penalized as well, and you'd probably move away from them towards someone who hasn't been penalized. So this is similar to systems like Steemit or Cosmos, which use delegated proof of stake, and many others as well. Cool. All right. We can always discuss more of this later. This is all published in kind of the LivePeer white paper. Real quick, a note about how this network can be cheaper than traditional networks. So in a centralized network, let's say this is a company. The company has some cost to run their media servers. They have to charge you as a broadcaster at least that cost plus a margin in order to make money, right? So if that cost is $10, they have to charge at least $10, maybe more. So in a decentralized network, the nodes that are doing the work, the transcoder nodes, they have the same cost, $10 to encode a bunch of video. So they have to make at least $10. But if they do the work honestly, they're going to earn some new inflationary token rewards, kind of the same way people earn Bitcoin if they mine Bitcoin, or Ethereum if they mine Ethereum. So whatever the value of that token that they're earning is, I'm going to make it up. The market will determine it, not me, but let's say that's worth $3. That means that they only have to charge a broadcaster $7 in order to break even. And this is interesting. So a good question is, why would that token that they're earning be worth anything? Why would it be worth $3? what you see in these cryptocurrency systems is, for better or worse, the effect of speculation, the effect of people speculating on what the value of token may be in the future, gives it that price. If they're earning token and it can be sold on an exchange right that moment for $3 because someone believes it is, that offsets the price that needs to be charged to cover their costs. So that's really powerful. A lot of people think we're in a cryptocurrency bubble and these prices are unsustainable, and of course they may be, but the upside of that is actually the more speculation there is in the early days, the cheaper broadcasting can be. It's like if you're going to earn $100 of token if you do this transcoding work correctly for a couple hours worth of streaming, you don't have to charge a broadcaster anything to use the platform because you're making more money through the kind of the speculative growth of this network. And of course, over the long term, you need real usage, real value to catch up. But there's an interesting flywheel that occurs. So if you have cheap broadcasting in the beginning, that creates demand for broadcasters. I said broadcasters pay a lot of money to broadcast right now. So demand for broadcasters actually means more fees flowing through the network, more perceived value of the token because there's more usage, it's growing, there's more things built on this platform. So if there's perceived value of the token, well, there's more competition to earn it by running those transcoding nodes that can encode and distribute a lot of videos really cheap. So that means people run better hardware, more hardware. They get economies of scale. And you see this in Bitcoin mining. Like the most efficient hardware and use of electricity in the world is a result of the competition to mine this valuable token of Bitcoin. Because people have better hardware and more bandwidth and it can do it more cheaper, that feeds back to the beginning of the cycle, which kind of kicks the whole thing going again. So this is how you achieve scale, and you actually create a huge peer-to-peer network that now has hopefully thousands or millions of stakeholders, contributors who are all invested, who now all have the incentives to contribute to an open, decentralized ecosystem rather than a closed, proprietary media server that just a single company owns. Is that clear? Does anyone have questions on that? Yes.
So the transcoder's role is equivalent to the media server role, the decentralized role. So what's the CDN role then in this decentralized model?
Very good question. So the question was, transcoders kind of they run the media server, and the question is, what is the CDN role? So that's the content delivery. How does video get distributed to many people? So first of all, anyone who runs the software is on a peer-to-peer network, and they're all essentially relaying video around. That's where we are today. And the protocol only indirectly incentivizes serving the video by the fact that, okay, I'm a transcoder, I'm making money through this. This network is only useful if I actually serve the video out, right? On our roadmap is to build a peer-to-peer CDN. And these exist right now, but they're closed and proprietary. They're really powerful. That means if you're all watching video, you're live streaming, you're using some of your bandwidth to pull the video down, but you also have peer connections, maybe 15 connections to other people watching the video, and you're using some of your bandwidth to serve it to them. And these peer-to-peer CDNs have been shown to take like 97% of the bandwidth off of an origin CDN, which is a huge cost savings. But they're being done kind of closed, proprietary. They're still charging broadcasters for the bandwidth that's being streamed, even though they're not providing it, their users are, and there's no flow of value or compensation back to the users who are providing their bandwidth. So in this decentralized blockchain world, we can solve that with tokens. Value can flow to you if you're giving your bandwidth to people who are requesting the video from you. So I think we're going to see a huge change, not just from livepeer, but in the whole kind of internet stack over the next 5 or 10 years, where you leave your computer on and you're using resources when you're streaming video or when you're using applications or using bandwidth. And your bill is kind of racking up. Your token balance that you're paying to use that is racking up. But at the same time, you're also sharing resources back. And for there, you're earning value from networks. So you see these things in like electricity grids, where if you have solar panels and you sell electricity onto the grid, you make money. But if you buy from the grid, you lose money. Well, I think we're going to see that in a decentralized world where all value is going to flow around the system through machine-to-machine tokens that users don't even need to be aware of or care about. And at the end of the month, they have some balance that I think will be a lot cheaper than what their balance might be today through, paying for a 8 gigabyte data plan on your cell phone, but you only use 2 gigabytes or something. I think it's better if things are more efficient and you pay as you go. So, cool. So it's running a little long. Just last kind of key point is, how do we make sure people did the work honestly? And that's where we use the Ethereum blockchain. And the short version of this is, when you want to broadcast a video, tell the blockchain, I want to broadcast a video. That'll assign transcoders to do the encodings for you. And using cryptography, after transcoders encode the video, they put a transaction on the blockchain to commit to the work that they did. They use something called a Merkle root and a Merkle proof, which is used in Ethereum and other systems to basically commit to work that you did. Our protocol then randomly challenges certain segments of video. Did you encode this correctly? Is the output video the same as the input video? Or did you insert, random frames or blank output? We use a system called TrueBit and Swarm, which are awesome projects built on Ethereum for storage and for verification of work, just to check the work that they did on a random piece of video. And if they passed, the transcoder gets paid. And if they don't pass, the transcoder gets penalized, they lose a deposit, the broadcaster gets refunded, the transcoder's reputation gets dinged, they get taken out of the active pool, they lose their job, the people who elected them or delegated them get penalized. And all of that logic is encoded in the livepeer protocol in smart contracts running on the Ethereum blockchain. So that's how kind of the incentives and enforcement work. Yep.
In terms of scalability, so let's say this scales to maybe half the size of YouTube in the next couple of years. What kind of challenges are you guys looking at when using the Ethereum blockchain? And how will you address that with time?
Yeah, great question. So the question is, how will we deal with scaling based on the challenges of the Ethereum blockchain? So right now, the Ethereum blockchain has been full lately. Popular apps like CryptoKitties and decentralized exchanges have really pushed it to its capacity. And that either makes it expensive or hard to get transactions through. So the good news about livepeer is that the only transaction that needs to happen synchronously is the first transaction to say, I'm going to broadcast a video, I have a job. And as soon as that gets confirmed, everything happens off-chain. Transcoders get assigned, video flows to them, people can consume and watch the video. Then the whole protocol about proving that you did the work correctly, getting paid or getting penalized, verifying it, that's all asynchronous. That can happen later, it can happen slowly. So you can pay very low fees in order to take your time and let those transactions go through. Similarly, this scales with the number of live streams and not necessarily with the number of viewers. So if you think about how many concurrent live streams are being started at any one time, the number's not astronomical to the portion where even if you're at the size of YouTube, that's not going to take down the Ethereum blockchain. But there's all sorts of scaling solutions we look at and can use in the future, running on private chain with a plasma-style architecture that commits to the main chain, using off-chain micropayments instead of this like interactive protocol, can reduce transactions. I'm so happy to discuss that a little bit more later. Cool. All right, so I'll wrap up now. Just a quick project status. livepeer is live on a testnet. We've been working on it for a little over a year now. We're streaming on the testnet right now on livepeer.tv. So yeah, like I said, bookmark that in a browser tab, leave it open. You'll see lots of people here creating lots of good content. Anyone can stream. You can stream a video on the testnet right now from your phone, and anyone else on the network, if you shared the stream ID with them, could request it and watch it. The way livepeer.tv works is we're hosting some gateway nodes that are pulling in and serving at that URL. So that's like the evil centralized hosting access point. But the video is on the network decentralized, and anyone could access it using its ID. And then eventually we can, of course, host this via fully decentralized apps that don't rely even on centralized DNS infrastructure. If you want to get involved, like I said, broadcast a video, run a node, join our testnet. Find us on our chat room, gitter.im/livepeer. We're all there, hanging out all day, happy to help anyone getting started. And it's a community project with people all around the world, so open to everyone. Cool, that's it. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. It's been very nice to see you all. You're back in with sound.
Until he notices.